So you can give a little bit more easier, install time options. You can do that with customize also, but the user has to edit the customization options. But with Helm, the user can merely set it in a single command. So I know we had a Helm-based installation long time ago for Iter8 1.0. I'm wondering if we should make it happen for Iter8 2.0 also.
So Shri, I remember a while back we had this like a curl plus a shell script installation, so we can kind of hide a lot of details like customize versus Helm inside of the shell script, so the user is not really exposed. But we always say there is a prereq of customize when installing Iter8 at the very start. I don't know.
So
this is one way to hide the
because yes, that's an option. We explored that option also in 2.0, but the actual number of lines is not that much. If you pretend this export is not there and this thing is directly embedded here, it's really 4 lines, and the last line is kind of optional. So it was complicating life, to be honest. I liked that idea, but I think we explored it. It was, as developers, it was complicating life for us. Can certainly revisit it. The Helm option, yes, I understand why you brought it up. So you're talking about simplification, which is a very good thing. But the Helm option is also for controlling RBACs, right? What are you installing when you install Iter8? Are you installing it for every domain, RBACs for every domain, or are you installing it for only, some selected domains, so that you don't, broaden the RBAC surface of Iter8? Okay, so we have a few other things here. Okay, Iter8 is installed, Iter8CTL, Helm's repo. Oh, Iter8 has a dedicated Helm repo, and this is how you get it. And there's a lot of CI that is done behind this Helm repo, so that Helm charts, Iter8 related Helm charts, are getting hosted in Iter8's GitHub pages repo, the branch. So this is how you get the Iter8 Helm repo. Of course, once you have a Helm chart, you can host it in any repo, Artifactory or any other repo. But this is Helm makes it easy to create repos from GitHub repos, and that is what I took advantage of for creating the Iter8 Helm repo. Okay, everything is set. So let's go ahead and start the experiment and start this tutorial. So let's go ahead and install baseline image, right? So there is no candidate at this point. I just have a simple application, hello world application with a service and a deployment. That's just what got deployed. So let's verify that what the version is, the baseline version that is running is. So let's do this in a separate terminal. So I'll do it in a separate terminal. And let's call the application that was deployed. There is a hello world 1.0 version that has been deployed. Now, this step is about deploying a candidate version. And just note the simplicity here. When you say deploy candidate version, the Helm chart also deploys the Iter8 experiment associated with the candidate. So everything is bundled in as part of the Helm chart deployment. Okay, so Helm gives this command to check what are the things that you're actually installing when you run the Helm command. And this is what you've installed so far. So we have a service, we have another candidate service, we have a deployment, and we have a candidate deployment, and we have an experiment, right? And the experiment is just a simple SLO validation experiment. And it's using Iter8's built-in metrics to send some queries, collect some values, and doing an SLO validation check. That's what it is doing. So you see, the scenario in this is very simple. It's a dark launched candidate, so it's not exposed to users. There is a stable version that is exposed to users, candidate version that is dark launched. Iter8 performs an experiment using the candidate version, and if things are looking good, then the candidate version can be promoted. That's the idea of this whole experiment. So let's try. Oh, so you can also do this. So let's verify the candidate version.
I have a question about the dark launch scenario. So this is really what we've been doing when we use the built-in metrics. Is that right? Pretty much in any domain when we use built-in metrics, we're really kind of doing a dark launch. This is just the first time it's been expressed this way. Is that right?
They seem to be going well together, yes. Let's put it that way. But there is no need why that has to be the case. So
well, user data can't go to the candidate unless there's some form of routing.
Correct. Correct.
And in general, we're using the built-in metrics. We're using them in a lot of places, but in general, the real advantage comes when we don't have that routing. Or a big advantage comes. It's not necessarily the big advantage. The question I'm asking is that it seems to me we are also sending test traffic to the live version.
No. In this experiment, we are not.
We're sending.
In this experiment, we're not. We can. If you want to do that, you can do that. So the metrics collection task supports it. In this experiment, I am not doing.
How do we not do that?
We explicitly specified the versions, which is intended to receive the traffic.
But this is the baseline.
So, yeah, this is conformance. Yeah, this is conformance experiment. So that's the other point, right? So that nomenclature is extremely confusing. So we have a baseline and a candidate in the Helm chart, and then the baseline in the experiment is the same as the candidate in the Helm chart. So I found this nomenclature like pretty confusing when I was doing this. So this is an issue which has to be settled.
Okay.
Okay, so candidates running. Okay, so you brought up one advantage, which is, you don't have, plain Kubernetes, you don't want to make assumptions on routing. You may have routing, but you don't want to use it for promotion and for this experiment, and you don't want to make any assumptions on routing. That's an advantage. The other advantage is if you are not receiving enough user traffic. You have a new version. You want to do an experiment and promote it. You're not getting enough user traffic for you to test it with the real user traffic. So you do need some synthetic traffic to send it and collect metrics with and make an assessment of your version and then promote it. That's the other advantage. Those are really the two scenarios where I think this plays in.
Well, it also plays in a scenario when you don't have a way of distinguishing traffic.
I'm not sure I followed.
Well, if you don't have a way of distinguishing between traffic to two versions, then this also plays. But here it's a conformance experiment, so never mind.
Yeah. Okay. So I did a curl for this latest version. It is 2.0. It is dark launched. The experiment is probably over. So let's go ahead and describe it. Looks good. And this is the other improvement that has happened since last week, right? So there is an iterate.ctl describe command. You don't have to specify the name of the experiment. If you actually look at the name of the experiment, it's pretty complicated because of what is needed. There's some random suffixes needed to be attached to the experiment name for various reasons, but it's not really unknown. the experiment name has all this stuff. So instead of you having to find out the name of the experiment that you launched and then say iterate.ctl describe this particular experiment name, you can now just say iterate.ctl describe, and it will pick up the iterate.ctl describe, and it will pick up the last experiment that has been created, and it will describe the last experiment that has been created. You can also say describe a specific experiment. Hopefully this works. Of course, if you have a name of an experiment, you want to describe a specific experiment, you can say that also. Oh.
Do you do this by sorting the starting time?
Creation time, yeah. The creation time is a part of every Kubernetes object.
Okay.
So actually, I should.
So I actually have a question. Yeah. If we're using creation time, I'm wondering if we have an issue with the target acquisition and target conflicts.
Where is the issue? Well, what is the issue?
Is it possible for, I don't remember the details, so I need to look, but is it possible for an experiment that was created later to be running and really be the last experiment then?
See, there's a definition of last experiment, and that last experiment is based on creation time. That's all. So every Kubernetes object has a creation timestamp associated with it, and that's the definition iterate.ctl describe uses if you don't specify an experiment name. If that definition doesn't suit you, no problem. You can specify the experiment name this way.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I as I asked the question, I've been thinking. No, my questions.
You can definitely, if you know the experiment that you want to describe, you can describe it this way. But in a lot of scenarios, in tutorial scenarios, you're just creating a one experiment and you're cleaning it up. So especially for tutorial purposes and even CI/CD purposes, you probably just created one experiment running in the cluster and you just want to pick it up. And this does the job for those scenarios. So you can also specify the namespace. Of course, if you don't specify a namespace, it's assumed to be default, but otherwise, you can explicitly specify namespace. So we have been talking about simplifying the iterate experience, and I just want to highlight the fact that these are more simplifications that have happened since we spoke last time. Okay, the candidate is working, it's doing well, and now we can do more things. We can actually assert that the candidate, there has been a winner found in this experiment, the experiment is completed, everything is good. These are the only two conditions supported right now, but in the future, I think more conditions make sense here. Like you have a baseline and a candidate, you can check if the baseline won or the candidate won, experiment completed successfully, experiment completed with a failure. You can have lots of different common sense conditions that you want to assert as part of the tool. You can do that here. Okay, so to be honest, I actually wrote the tutorial before I pushed changes to iterate.ctl because this was the approach I wanted to take. Let's just create the tutorial we want to we want the user experience, and then find the gaps that are there and fill the gaps. So that was the top-down view kind of, that was, that went on behind this tutorial. Okay, let's go ahead, promote. Everything is looking good. 2.0 can be promoted. So let's just go ahead and promote. And Helm does require this nullification. It has a way of, ignoring certain fields. So if you want Helm to ignore the default values of candidate, this is the way to do it. So you can do it in the set command, you can do it in the values file, but essentially just create a null object or whatever objects you want to be ignored. Okay, so that's about this experiment. really. It's the moral here is that it's a Helm experiment, and experiment is rolled in. Each time there is a candidate that is getting created, experiment is also getting created. So from a CI/CD perspective, no additional work is needed to create the experiment. Of course, work is needed in creating the Helm chart, and that work is one time, how you template your applications. At the same time, you template the experiment that goes with your application. And in the CI/CD, you just do whatever you would have normally done for your Helm releases. That's the idea. I have a version of this experiment with Knative, and that has some other interesting, things going on for it. So should I go there? Are there any questions before we head to the Knative world?
So Shri, one question is that I know we're trying to keep all the domain-specific things out of the controller, but I'm just wondering, at the end of the experiment, we know that the candidate version has won. What's the reason that we need to run this Helm upgrade command to do the promotion instead of doing the promotion within the controller itself?
So you can do, let's call it the experiment, right? Because you don't have, the controller will not do it. Technically, it's the handler that will do it. So you can do it, right? So you can do it, you can write a handler task that can do the promotion. But there are two reasons why I didn't do that. In this case, one is I wanted to separate the steps a little bit, right? So I wanted to kind of, for tutorial purposes, for learning purposes, I wanted to say this is what happens in iterate view of how release happens. There's the baseline creation, there's a candidate creation, there is an experiment, make sure a candidate won, and then there's a promotion. I wanted to separate the steps. And number two, promotion is a tricky business, right? So if you were to embed this command in a iterate handler, which you can do, first of all, you have to give Helm uses secrets for storing release information. So you'll have to give iterate handler the permission to read the Helm secret. That's number one, which is okay. Let's say you do that and you promote it in the Helm experiment. But there is also GitOps questions, right? I don't want to use, embed the promotion step in the experiment. I want the source of truth, in this case, the values file, to be my GitHub repo. And that is where I want the change to happen. So in which case, embedding it in the experiment is not possible. It's not the right thing to do. Same way, once again, GitOps, but I want to change the values file. Maybe I just want to receive a notification and change the values file. Again, embedding in the experiment is not the way to go if you want to do that. So long story short, if you want to embed this command in the experiment, you can, after giving iterate the permission to read Helm secret. But if you want to do it in a GitOpsy way, this kind of separates the step so that you have the option of doing things in a GitOpsy way also. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, but the call before this call, you were asking, what are the differences between Flagger and Iter8, right? In terms of user experience. Mm-hmm. So let's first talk about the non-GitOps, okay? So in a non-GitOps way, Flagger would not require this separate step of promoting the winner, right? Because it's automatically kind of shifting the traffic to the winner of the experiment after the experiment is finished. Mm-hmm. So there's no separate promotion step. Then in the GitOps scenario, Flagger currently doesn't support it, right? Whereas for us, it wouldn't be a Helm upgrade command. We would actually change values in the values files in the repo, and then relying on Argo CD to actually run the Helm command to do the promotion.
Correct. So that change to the values file needs to happen in the experiment, in the GitHub scenario, if that's what you're saying.
Right. So I think GitOps scenario, there's definitely a difference because Flagger doesn't support it, the eventual promotion. But in a non-GitOps way, we're kind of one steps more complicated than Flagger.
Yeah, let's discuss it. I am prioritizing GitOps scenarios for this Helm-based stuff, right? Especially Knative. A lot of the questions has been around GitOps, so I'm kind of still figuring out what the right way to position this is. So I think there is a way to do this in a non-GitOps way. You can embed this Helm command in the Iter8 experiment, and then there is a way to do it in the GitOps way also. So it is possible to simplify that. If your goal is to take out the step, put it in experiment, it is possible. But if it's desirable, that's a question that I'm struggling with at the moment.
I see. Yeah. I see. Okay.
Okay, so let's keep going. Yeah, so use in production. Here's the Helm chart. Change it as you need and use it in production. That's the idea. All right, let's go to Knative. Oh, good point. So this needs to change. There's a Linkerd tutorial now. So this list needs to change. I didn't change that list. So
I can make the change.
Yeah, go for it. But please, thank you. You want to promote it. Okay, so just knocking out that thing. And okay, so let's try the Knative tutorial. So in the Knative world, it's kind of similar. Set up your Kubernetes cluster with Knative and set up your local environment also. Here are the steps. I think the only additional step needed for me is to install Knative in the cluster. So let's go ahead and do that. But here's what I want to point out here, right? For Knative user, let's say you already have a cluster and you have Knative installed in the cluster and you want to try out Iter8 and you want to try out an Iter8 tutorial. This now makes it very clear how to do it. So there's an install Knative step, which you will obviously skip if you have a cluster. There is a create cluster step, which you will obviously skip if you already have access to a cluster. So this platform setup separation, I think, is useful for all our tutorials. Whatever your domain is, I think it's nice to describe it, break up the steps in such a way that many people come in with their own Knative or cluster or Istio cluster. They don't want our help in installing those things. They want to only see what Iter8 is about. So I think we should give them a way to get started from step 4 instead of do 1, 2, and 3. So skip 1, 2, and 3 if you already have them and start in step 4. Okay, so let's, first point first, this tutorial is in fact identical to your getting started tutorial. The only difference is in the Helm chart that is used as part of the tutorial. So just because I'm using a Knative domain did not change anything for me in this whole tutorial. Even the values file, the commands were identical. It just so happened that I could get away in this tutorial with making those things identical because even in Knative, this is how you change an application by changing the image tag. This is how you change it. So there are other ways to introduce changes. You can have environment variables that change, therefore get a new configuration. I didn't want to introduce that complexity, but assuming the only changes always happen through image tags, this gives you this shows you how to do it. You can always edit the values file in the Helm chart to have more options for you here. Okay, so let's stop these things. Stop these things. Let's go ahead and create my Knative application. You see, there is one major advantage because of the fact that the Helm charts look similar. It means that we can start thinking about CI/CD patterns that are similar, that cuts across domains. So I think that is one of the main motivations, at least for me, for purposefully making the Helm charts and the Helm values align with the other tutorial. Because whatever Argus CD tutorial that I'm going to create next for this getting started, I think the same principles essentially will apply for this tutorial also, for the Knative tutorial also. So when I convert your first experiment without Knative to Argus CD experiment, I think the same logic will apply for converting this experiment also to Argus CD experiment. That's the motivation for structuring it in the same way. Okay, so let's make sure Knative application is ready. It's ready, and let's access it. And let's query it. It's the same application really. So hello world application, I'm querying the baseline now. Let's go ahead, create a candidate. And as usual, this is how you get to see what you installed. So Michael, going back to your question, you're right. Once again, this is metrics collection. Once again, this is a dark launch, right? So that's what is going on in the scenario also. Once again, let's make sure things
is
are
this
ready.
now a conformance experiment as well?
Yeah, I think it is. This is again a conformance experiment.
Okay, so because in the past, getting started was an A/B experiment, correct?
Yeah, that's the other change. So I just moved that to, I think it was an SLO validation experiment.
Okay,
So
either way,
even before, yeah, it has changed. So I moved that to under SLO validation. Okay, so let's make sure the candidate is up. Candidate is up. So if you notice the difference in the curl commands, I curled the baseline this way. I curled the candidate this way. Candidate is nice. It kind of creates these distinct routes, even though the candidate is not actually visible to the end user. 100% of end user traffic is going here. However, it creates a route so that the candidate can be queried, and experiments like this can be made possible. That's why Knative does it. So the route is there. Okay, so let's go ahead and describe the experiment. Once again, the experiment is looking good. Candidate succeeded. We have a new version, winning version. The winning version is new version. Good. Like here, the naming is better. So winning version is the new version. So let's promote this new version. Let's assert everything is all right. And let's promote the new version. And this time, when I query, yeah, hello 2.0. So my hello default example.com is now 2.0 because the 2.0 has been promoted, and I'm seeing that now. That's what the end users are seeing. So let's uninstall. There's really two motivations here, right? So the reason for these simplifications is that we can do the GitOps scenarios and we can do the CI/CD scenarios a little bit easier with Helm, as opposed to raw experiments. These experiments are raw experiments without any notion of templating in them. templating for your application in them. So on the other hand, here we are using Helm-based templates for your application, and experiment is also baked in as part of your candidate templates. So it makes CI/CD easier. It makes GitOps easier. Those are the next set of tutorials for Knative and also for plain Kubernetes. We will have an Argo CD, and we'll also have a GitHub Actions based tutorial for these things. But Helm makes it easier. Helm will make the end-to-end experience of those tutorials easier, and that is the main attraction for introducing these Helm experiments. All right, let's pause here. Any questions before we move on to the other topics? Okay, all right, so we will see a version of the Knative experiment, and we will see the Knative experiment that we just saw today, and also an Argo CD version of it, hopefully a GitHub Actions version of it next week in the Knative meetup, right? So probably we should cancel Iter8 meeting because it's there is an Iter8 talk in the Knative meetup, and it's kind of the timings are identical. So it's not identical, it's overlapping. So probably we should cancel next week's meeting to make room for the Knative meetup. And next topic is notification task. Michael, I know you've been working on it. How is it coming along? Do you want to say anything about it?
Sure. If you want to stop sharing.
Let me stop.
Oh dear. Google Chrome would like to record this screen. Sorry. Hello? Can you hear me? I'm having trouble sharing my screen.
Is there? Do you like me to drive it while?
Google Chrome does not have screen recording permission.
I can go to your fork and share if you want.
No, I wanted to show something that's not in the fork yet.
Oh, okay.
To give permission to record the screen, do you remember the system preference?
I must have said yes, yes, yes for everything some time ago for it to work for me.
Michael, you're in Chrome, right?
Yes.
Like the little lock icon in the URL bar?
Yes.
Can you click on that? And you can provide permissions for your camera and microphone.
So camera allowed, microphone allowed, notification allowed.
Okay. So that's
not it. No, it's about screen sharing.
Yeah, it's in system preferences under security and privacy.
Okay.
There's a tab called privacy, and on the left side, if you scroll down to screen recording.
Scroll.
And then you click the lock button, the lock at the bottom of that window to make changes. And then you can select whichever app you want to allow.
And I add that one.
I'm guessing you have to drop off and join the call. Well, did you just do that? Yeah, he did. Okay.
Actually, for me, that box is not checked.
What box is not checked?
Google Chrome. It's not checked.
That's strange.
I was able to share it though without it.
I don't know. Let's see if Michael can now.
Oh, good. That worked for him.
Oh, maybe you're using Safari, Shri.
You're muted, Mike.
Yep, I know, but something was covering the unmute button. Yeah, I've never used Chrome to share screen before, so I'd never set that permission. I only put Chrome in to use for Google Meet because I was having trouble with my accounts. Okay, so what I wanted to show is the notification task, HTTP notification. So this is the documentation sort of in process. And basically it allows us to send an HTTP request, either a post or a GET. In order to do that, it looks something like this. It looks a little complex, but at the basics, you need to specify a URL. That's the only required parameter here. Everything else, there's a default or it's not required. The body can be set to allow you to specify what the message looks like. In this case, I've created a body. The URL is sort of generic, but it's for a GitHub action, and this is a body that might be used for that action with a couple of inputs. You can specify a secret that can contain a username or password if you're using basic authorization, or you can put a token if it's a bearer authorization, or you can put anything else in there if you like, and they stay hidden. The authorization type can be bearer, basic, or API keys. So basically, what we did for metrics is just been repeated here, and the same for headers. This is a header that one uses for GitHub Actions, and there is a default header, which is the content type. Will be set to application JSON. It kind of assumes we're going to be sending JSON bodies. But again, the user can override that by setting a header. So I described those things. This is just default description what the body will look like if no body is specified. So there will be a default body, which is basically a summary of the experiment and what the object of the experiment looks like. And I have to fill in the details of what weights look like. And that's it. I wanted to just show you quickly what it might look like in practice. So I have set up here the Istio Quick Start example. And I modified the experiment to include this task exactly as I showed it in the documentation. This time it's referring to a specific GitHub action in one of my own repositories. This GitHub action is a very simple action. What it does is it should echo these two lines here. So there are two inputs. It expects a name and a home, and it will basically echo them to the screen. And in the specification of the body, you're indicating there are two inputs, a name and a home, and these will be taken from the experiment. So you're using placeholders to identify what you want to put there. This action, you can see it's been run 29 times. But we'll go ahead and run an experiment and watch it run yet again. just for fun, we can try out the new Iter8 control. I think I forgot to start the load generation. So I hope it runs. Whoops.
I wonder if it helps if you put a watch minus X in front of your Iter8 describe.
It will, but
no, it's looking ugly.
Yeah, it's just too big.
Yeah.
There we go. I don't know if I'm getting numbers or not. Ah, we got some numbers. Okay. Well, whatever. So it has finished, and it started the finish handler. And if we watch, we should see a GitHub action kick off. And there it is. And there it finished. And it said hello from quick
Very
start
cool.
in namespace default. So that's really the content here.
This is
in principle,
very powerful.
we can use this for integration with GitHub Actions, with Argo CD, with heck, we can replace the Slack one with this if we want. Maybe. And any others, you know, to trigger these kinds of, we could call pipeline actions.
So this is really powerful, Michael. So I don't think it's difficult to use. I think it is simple to use. Those are the, you know, obviously if you want to trigger something in GitHub, you need some permissions, you need some tokens and stuff like that. So you would expect users to supply it somewhere or other. So I think that's minimal requirements.
So similar kind of statements about RBAC, of course. It's necessary to give permission to reading the secrets to Iter8 handler. That's not a default. So if we're using this particular task, then you need to have done that. And I don't think we have a good way of expressing all these needs, except in the documentation, which is easy to miss. But the second comment is I think this can also then be used as a basis, you know, to make some additional tasks that maybe are just sugarcoating. So we could write a GitHub action specific task that just takes as inputs the action and the list of inputs and formats the message for you. It could create a cloud event notification event. A cloud event is a kind of notification where there's kind of a structured, well-defined body. We could create such a task as well. I don't think we can create one and fill it in completely. There's a need to specify a sender. And I think this is a field that we would not determine. The experimenter would define the sender field. But everything else we can sort of fill in automatically. So we could create a number of very specific kind of HTTP request tasks if it made sense and would simplify the use as well, even further.
Yeah, I really like this, Michael. Just one kind of comment is instead of notification /HTTP, I was hoping that you would create this comment /HTTP first, right? Because then you would be able to write notification /Slack or webhook / GitHub Actions, like what you were describing.
So I think we can still write those things. This is just a statement about name.
Exactly. Yeah.
and I guess you missed the conversation in the issue that Shri and I had.
Oh, okay. There were more. Okay.
It's a fine line, we this can be treated as a notification. Notifications trigger actions. It can be treated as a kind of request. Requests are used to issue notifications as well as do other things. So it's one or the other, or kind of toss up. Maybe what we do is we'll call it both, and we'll just one uses the other.
Okay.
The other thing is, this is a marketing principle, right? So the common library has a few tasks in it already. Everybody else is a singleton. I have a library and I have one task residing in that library. So I think the fact that you call it notification kind of, gives some weight to the notification library. The fact that library contains more tasks, I think it gives a little bit of weight to that also.
Yeah. And we'll get feedback from users if they find the name confusing.
Yeah. The other thing is, so in terms of actual usage, the two things I'm hoping we can show off with this, right? Next, when we go to the Knative community, when we talk about GitOps, we always think about pull-based GitOps with GitOps operators like Argus CD and Flux CD and things like that. But there's also push-based GitOps. So you have a Git source of truth, and you have a GitHub action that is reading some stuff and doing Helm commands or doing other commands. That's also GitOps. It's just not pull-based GitOps. It's called push-based GitOps. So I think a lot of users actually are in that territory. They haven't started using operators for GitOps yet, but they are using Git to trigger what goes into their cluster. So that is more push-based. This definitely plays in there big time, right? So you have, in the Helm world, you have a values file, and each time a values file changes, then you can, something runs, and you can trigger changes to the values file using this, from an experiment, using this notification. So that's one usage scenario I would like to present if possible in the Knative meetup. The other usage is what you mentioned, Michael, which is the cloud events. I think there is some nice connections between cloud events and Knative eventing and other Knative ecosystem components. So we should bring up. We don't need a working example, I think, because from what I understood, cloud events is just a format for the notification.
Yes.
So even if you can just document it or even at least flash it, saying this is how you would use it for cloud event notifications, I think it will grab some attention in that community in particular.
Yeah, no, I agree. We don't have to, and it is just a formatting. And I think I went through it at what was required, what was not required, and I think we can produce it pretty well. There's, as I said, just one field that I feel we should not be setting. Now, how they get consumed and who's consuming them, that's a whole separate question. If that's a community that already has tooling around it, great.
Yep.
Michael,
really good. Yeah.
One question is that we talked about the kind of converting our Istio GitOps tutorial to use GitHub Actions. It looks like you've already done like 90% of the work to kind of enable this HTTP call. Do you have cycles to actually do this conversion?
Yeah, let's talk about doing that. Yeah.
Because it would also be nice to have somebody else on the team to try out the GitOps scenario other than Alan. Poor guy went through that many times to get the kinks out of it. So if we have another person on the team to try that out, that would be great.
Yeah, I think the only hard part there will be converting stuff to GitHub Actions, and I don't know. There are still some questions in my mind about GitHub Actions and its relationship to things like push requests and what are the inputs for these? These are being triggered externally. So yeah, let's work together on this.
Sure, sounds good.
So one more point on this. So Alan, you have an outstanding PR for Argus CD wording changes. I noticed that. So I think it can be merged. Maybe you want to rebase and push and we will just merge it. I don't know if you want to do that.
Okay. Yep.
I don't think it needs any change other than just rebase and push. From what I could tell.
I don't even remember what's in there, but I'll rebase it.
Maybe review it then.
I just want to do a time check because the call might just get cut at some point.
Yeah, I think there's 4 more minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Then I have to drop off now. Talk to you in a bit.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Thank you for the call. See you.